Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Sensitive Stability BPD Live Show. My name is Kevin Reynolds. I am your host. For those of you who don't know me, I am a BPD survivor and a BPD coach helping people get out of this condition at this point. Been in remission for a long time, and I'm telling you, remission's possible for anyone. So if this is the first time you're watching this show, we do the show Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. US EST here on TikTok. If you miss that time slot or can't make it at 7 a.m., we do post the shows to YouTube. So, you can check us out there. Good morning, everyone. Morning, Travis. Today I would like to talk about a little bit about the mentality shift that is required, in my opinion, to be able to get to full remission. Full remission being no symptoms, no splits, no episodes whatsoever. And there is a very real mentality shift required there. Thank you, Nicole. The ideas of the world are not the same before remission and after remission. In fact, you see basically everything differently. And that might seem like a scary thing, but it's better. It's better. The fears are what are in the way of you being able to see that might be a better world and a way for you to be able to get what you want without having to pay all these exorbitant prices, right? Because you are paying prices to get what you want right now. And what you want isn't fully garnered here. We're getting portions of what we're aiming at before remission, and that's one of the reasons we keep doing what we do, is because to some extent it does work. You know what I mean? To some extent it does provide a benefit. Remember that human beings, will only do things in life that benefit them, right? They'll only do things in life that benefit them. And sometimes that benefits hard to notice. Sometimes it's hard to see. Sometimes it's hidden. Sometimes it's not really all that good for you. It's like a temporary advantage. But the conscious decisions that we're making, as well as some of the subconscious decisions, are designed to get you something. So the mentality shift from before remission, being in a place where, thank you, appreciate you, MM. Being in a place where everything is scary, and then the mentality after remission, being in a place where there is no fear any longer, creates a different world around you. I often talk about how we curate the world that we live in. It's entirely true. If you are trapped in your mind in a place that's really negative, you will have a really negative experience. If you're trapped in a place that's really positive, well, I shouldn't say trapped, but, we are trapping something. I never really was into Pokemon, but I get the impression it's a lot like that. We are trapping something. And you have to make the choice. And it is a choice as to whether or not you want to go the negative route or go, the positive route. Let's not forget the parable here. If two wolves are, one's in a light room and one's in a dark room, which wolf survives? And it's not the one you might think. The light wolf is not the answer. The answer is whichever wolf you feed survives, right? You don't feed that light wolf, it will not survive. So you have a choice. You can put your chips, on the kind of life that you want to live, or you could put them on the kind of life that you think you deserve to live, which before remission, we often feel we don't deserve much, which is part of our problem here, and that's part of the mentality shift. In other words, you have to either take care of the fears, or the fears will take care of you. Does that make sense? You either have to take care of the fear, or the fear will take care of you. And they will run your life, and they will find ways to make everything make sense. And that's part of the issue. Because all the stuff that you're worried about, you're going to find confirmation bias in your world to make it make sense. So that you're able to say, see, I was right. I was right to worry about that. I was right to fear this. I was right to be scared about this. I knew that would happen. But we are creating a world that makes these types of things more likely. People with borderline personality disorder are insanely clever people. I mean, I talk about it all the time, how brilliant our mind will work in the background to resolve the issues best it can. I mean, it's miserable, but it's also impressive. You have to admit, we will formulate this world with other people in it, and be able to construct a place where, we always get sympathy, for example, no matter what. And then after we do something that we're not so proud of, we will create the guilt and the blame and the shame and the embarrassment to still somehow get what it is we temporarily need. I remember after destroying my entire house during one of these episodes, the very next day, I had convinced all of my friends to help me clean it all up. Very regular occurrence. I would guilt them into it, right? So instead of them getting an authentic apology, right? Something that really might help fix the problem, I would craft this environment afterwards that would make them feel bad for me. And of course, then I get what I want out of the situation. I don't feel alone. I won't get abandoned. They'll even help me clean, which is how I'll know that they're still my friend, because I couldn't possibly measure that based on just love in general. Have to have them do something for me, otherwise I can't see it. That's part of the issue that we're in, is that we measure love incorrectly as well. It's a huge problem. It doesn't mean we don't have love. It doesn't mean we can't feel love. It doesn't mean we don't have a relationship where we're both in love. All these things can be true at the same time, but we are measuring it wrong, and that is part of why we are where we are every day, where you're so terrified that they're going to leave and they don't love you, and you just can't see the love and care that they do have. It's a regular thing, man. It's a regular situation. So, with that said, you either live your dreams or you live your fears. And getting to remission means that you no longer let the fears have you. You take control. You take control of the dreams. And you make a commitment that you are going to do whatever it is that you have to do to see the dreams become true. Some of the dreams are very simple, things like I just want peace in my life. Other dreams might be complicated. I want to change the world. But all the fears that are in the way of all those types of dreams are the same kinds of fears that prevent you from feeling security, general security in your relationship. You must understand your value in the world as a person in order to beat this condition. That is not easy to do when you have spent your entire life feeling the opposite of purpose, feeling the opposite of worth, feeling the opposite of loved, feeling like you don't fit in. These kinds of feelings, they build up and they weigh on a person. It's not, they don't live rent-free. The way that you have been living, the things that you allow your mind to tell itself all the time, every day, constantly, nonstop, these hurtful, painful things, all the negative self-talk, it is building up and working to chip away at the pieces of you that feel good. And the more that you feel bad, the more that you feel bad. That formula is why most of us stay trapped our whole lives this way. It is an exponential kind of buildup. The more that you experience failure in life, the more that you expect it. So then why? What's the point in trying? Why even make an effort, right? It is a very difficult life, but it's so weird to me being on the other side now, because, I often say that I could give all of the answers to somebody overnight And if they did it all, they'd be in remission like immediately. I often say that, but they would never be able to, because this is something you have to work through, you know? But when I look back in time and I realize, having the wisdom that I have now, I really could have flipped overnight and instantaneously had a different perspective about life in general and every aspect of my life. I could have had a total perspective shift that would have changed my world forever and massively sped up my journey to remission. Yet I was unwilling to trust those things, mainly because there was nobody there who had been through it, who was telling me this is going to be okay. You know what I mean? I wish there was somebody who was there to tell me the whole time, this is going to be okay. Just follow in my footsteps here. It'll work out. Instead, every single change I had to make was completely terrifying. It was completely terrifying. And there was no way except for through it. And I had to suck it up every time. And I did so because with each element of this condition that needs to be changed, you know, with each thing you have to do, it's just a huge part of your coping mechanisms that you've been using your entire life have to go. It's how you've been doing things, you know? It would be like if I was a movie producer now, like in today's day and age, right? And then I got sent back to time to like 1920 when they're first making movies. And I'm like, oh, no, you're doing that wrong. Let me show you how to do this. It's going to look way different. It's going to look way different. I mean, they have a set way of accomplishing tasks, right? And you might have a better way, but they know this way is tried and true. And that's kind of the scenario that we're in when we have BPD. Everything that you are doing, you're doing it for a reason. It's not like we chose to behave this way. It's not like we authentically chose these actions as the best actions. Most of the time, it's the only action we could do. And that is mostly true until you learn other ways of thinking and other actions, of which we do everything we can to prevent learning those things, right? And that's because what we're doing is easier, comfortable, tried and true. It might just be a temporary bandage, but when that's the only way you've ever lived, the people who did not see electricity were shocked to see electricity, you know? And that is the difference between pre-remission and remission. It's kind of like discovering the light bulb for the first time. It's insanely different, the two worlds. Insanely different. And I don't know how I could have gotten a taste of that before. If I was starting my journey and somebody was telling me all this, I don't know how I could have gotten a taste of that without having to risk something. Because let's face it, to get over fear means to risk. That's what that means. And it is what it is, you know? The hero is always born in tragedy. It is not something that happens just because you decide. It is something that is built. You know, being the type of person that you want to be is built. Being the athlete you want to be is trained. You know, you work up to building the weights that you want to lift, right? You work up to it. You can't just sit down on a bench and lift 800 pounds. You have to build muscle. Similarly, to get out of this, you have to build mental strength. You have to wake up every day and say that there is a purpose, there is a reason for me to want to make this life a better life. And for me, it's always come in form of what other people could get out of my existence here on Earth, you know? Good morning, Pasha. Thank you. I see my past And I thought for most of my life, when I was not in remission, that I deserved to suffer. That's how I lived. I lived feeling like I was here to suffer. And that is absolutely not why we're here. There's no design that includes suffering as one of the, plans. That's not in the plan for any of us. Now struggle is required. Now, I would somehow, it's the BPD mind, this is what I mean when I say it's brilliant. It's so brilliant. It has found ways to cope and survive in the world with minimal struggle, and it will utilize suffering. It literally takes the suffering of which we were made victims, tragedy happened, a lot of bad stuff, usually invalidating childhood, all that kind of thing, bullying, etc. And we will literally turn that into a positive for us. I mean, it isn't really a positive. It's holding you back, the defense mechanisms and all the things, creating the episodes, the splits, the guilt and all this. But if you really take time to think about it, the BPD mind is an incredible, brilliant survival it's amazing. It literally took me being a victim and found a way for me to get validation out of that in the outside world. I mean, I didn't know how to validate myself. It figured out how to get the validation. Now, it was inappropriate. It was the wrong kind of validation. It was temporary and fleeting and empty, weighted, and ultimately just inappropriate in general for everybody involved. Seeking validation from other people because you don't feel whole and don't know how to validate yourself, right? Got it. But you still have to get a credit for its ability to find that sort of survival in a sea of pain and suffering. I think that's amazing. And I think giving yourself some credit for your mind's ability to try and create entire worlds around you to make survival easier for you, that's amazing. And I think adopting that reality, understanding that is the reality, in other words, is one of the mechanisms that you can employ now to skip ahead and get to remission faster. Nobody likes being put in a box, especially us. I hate being put in a box. If somebody says, oh, you're going to keep doing this, you're going to keep behaving like this, which is what I'm saying to you. You will continue to let the fears have you until you decide to get over the fears. They will just control and manipulate your life. They will keep you trapped exactly where you are. Your behavior will stay the same. You have to be able to step up to the plate at least. You don't have to hit a home run the first time, but you actually have to show up. And showing up's like half the battle, man. I know that seems really trite, but I swear to God, showing up every morning could be something as simple as showing up to this live every morning, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. US EST. You keep showing up, you'll keep getting better. You keep improving. You keep seeing differences that are rewarding and satisfying. You get up at the same time every day. You promise yourself, I'm going to get up at 5:30 and start working out. No more lying to yourself. If you're struggling to get up at 5:30, maybe get up at 7 instead. 8 o'clock, whatever. But start getting consistent and start showing up. You have that interview you need to go to. Showing up is half the battle, right? Don't worry so much about doing the best you can do. Just naturally do that in the moment and just keep showing up every day. And you cannot give in to the concept that you deserve to suffer. And I'll tell you why. The most important reason that is unacceptable isn't even because of you. It is because of all of the other people in your life who love you and support you and who need you, frankly. We are a limited resource, my friends. People with BPD are extraordinary, and we are rare and limited. And we're meant to make a giant impact on the people around us and the outside world. That's why you're here. It's to fix the wrongs in the world. It's to make people smile. It's to build good memories. It's to give validation away. You understand the need and desire to be accepted and belong better than anyone, right? Yet, you're so concerned with yourself. Why me? Why is it happening to me? Nobody cares about me. Instead, there's a million people around you. If you look anywhere, like in any fucking direction you look, there's a million suffering people who feel like that. And you're the only one in that group of people who could validate them, who could help them feel accepted, who could make them feel like they're belonged, who could give them a purpose and a reason to live, so you can make their life better. It's you. And yet, we're going to cry instead, you know. Woe is me. My childhood sucked. I mean, mine too, you know. I complained about it for a really long time. Got me nowhere, basically. Got me nowhere. But focusing on making the world a better place for everyone else has brought me more peace and happiness and validation than I could ever have thought possible. Trixie says, good morning to you, Trixie. My 2 teenage boys get upset and say, Mom, they got the best of you, and we got what's left of you. Well, how are they to know that everybody and everything got the best of you? You know, they definitely have what's left of you. That's true. But that's true for all of us at any moment, at any point in our lives. Right now, you guys have what's left of me, which is coincidentally also whatever's best in me at this point. You are a mold of your entire life, Trixie. You are the wisdom that is being built. You are the dreams that you have let slip away. You are the dreams that you still have. You're your potential that you didn't achieve. You're your potential that you did. I mean, that's given any person in here. That's true for all of us at any moment. In the past, you've always done the best you can do no matter what. You always did the best you could do at the time. Obviously, if you could have done better, you would have done better. You know? So, in the situation, you can't be beating yourself up over things like this. Good morning, Jill. Thank you. Good to see you on this bright Monday. You know, you got to start being easier on yourself for what's happened. And you have to start being tougher on yourself for what you should be doing in the world. 2 things can be true at the same time. I could be easy on myself for the past that I can't change, and I could be optimistic for the future and a source of positivity in the room, in any room that I show up in. Any room that I'm present in. I will be positive and I will contribute optimistically to whatever situation I'm in. You ever talk to somebody who's super negative? Because people with BPD, we had really bad things happen really early, and it is very difficult for us to live a positive life. So I understand what you're up against. If you guys don't, did we run a? We need to start advertising these polls. You know, I don't know if it's even worth it to do the polls, to be honest. Partly because I don't see them, so I don't say anything, so that nobody notices. But I've never really gotten anything useful out of them, so maybe just nix those polls. But anyway, if you ever talk to somebody who's super, super negative, like Trixie says, but there's so much pain that someone, you're in the right place. You're in the right place. And then you say, well, I wonder, is it even worth it? Well, you mentioned 2 boys, so yes, it's worth it. Anybody who has kids, unfortunately for you, you have more than enough motivation to where you don't have an excuse anymore. You must do better, period. Okay? But when you think about those times, those memories, when the negative person comes in the room and how they drain everybody else's energy, right? And everybody literally gets cortisol from them, and they're giving you their cortisol. They don't see themselves. It is a lack of self-awareness that produces that scenario. It is a lack of self-awareness that produces a person who's residing in negativity. They don't see how they look to the outside world, or they would not be doing what they're doing, I guarantee it. Nobody wants to look like that. They don't realize that they look like that. You don't realize that you look like that. I come into the room and I'm super negative today, right? Imagine it. Imagine it. I'm sitting here telling you there's no point. I'll tell you right now, there's no point. Everything sucks. It's all stupid. It's meaningless. Your job, meaningless. Your money, don't need it really. It's meaningless. It's fake. We'll never make it big. It's all rigged. The election, everything, all of it's rigged. It's all put together in some way where, they're just going to hold us down because they always hold down the man. You can't get anywhere in life. There's no point in starting a business. You need lots and lots of money to start a business. You can't make a big dent or impact on the world unless you're somebody, and they all come from money. You see what I'm trying to say here? Nobody wants to be in that place. Unless you want to suffer. And it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere. And we could join forces and hold hands in our misery if we so please, but that is the issue with this, you see, is that that's all we've known for most of our lives. Most of us, for most of our lives, have only known suffering. And we're talking about... It's a good question, Mayor. It's a good question. We're talking about the difference in mentalities before remission and after remission. We're talking about what keeps you from shifting into BPD remission and what promotes you in terms of getting there faster. And the answer is how you control fear and how you look at the world that you're living in. If I walk into a room and I have the mentality that there is no point, that everything is worthless and stupid and pointless, and I am worthless and will never amount to anything, I will continue to find confirmation bias the whole time that that's true. See what that person just did to me? That's why I can't get ahead, because every time I start being positive, somebody says something like that, or it's always got to be my fault or somebody else's fault. The world's out to get me nonstop constantly. And if I'm honest with myself, that is how I was living. I was living like that. Every single day of my life, I was finding ways where I could kind of craft this into me being the victim somehow, because that was the only coping mechanism I knew to get what I wanted out of life, which was attention at the time. And it wasn't even really attention, but the attention is, we hate that. People say, you're seeking attention, and then everybody wants to say, we're not seeking attention. Yes, we are. We are seeking attention because attention equals love, and we want to feel loved, and we don't feel like anybody cares about us. So yes, we do things that end up putting us in positions where we get attention. Period. That's how it works. All right? And there's no sense in hiding away from these things. There's no sense there's no shame in understanding and accepting that we have trust issues. There's no shame in accepting anything that's necessary to get better here. That's the truth. And until you start to get behind that kind of ideology, you will continue to feed the dark wolf, right? And your light wolf, who could have had a great life, will perish because you chose to sit in darkness, So I'll try to pay a little bit better attention to the comments here. I don't typically do as good of a job as that as I'd like. If you want to be seen or heard or pinned, please do tag Sensitive Stability Coach, my good friend and our moderator here in the channel. So Tracy says, how can we learn to accept constructive criticism without taking it too personally, not reacting? That's a great question. Nice job. So I had to have a massive shift in how I took in the data from the outside world. And that is how I started to get over it. I started to look at the information that I am taking in from everyone else and everything else in the world as data. I just simplified it. I went from, this is an opinion that I disagree with, or how could they say that? I just said, oh, well, this is like ones and zeros, like a computer, It's just data coming in. Now, I don't like this data. Thanks, Graves. I don't like this data when I analyze it, but you know what? That's not me to worry about right now. I don't need to worry about whether I like it or not. I need to worry about collecting it all. You have two options, basically, Tracy. Option number one is that you are someone who is going to make sure that they collect all data to have the fullest picture of whatever environment or world they're dealing with, right? Option two is we're going to curate a world where we get angry or defensive or fight tooth and nail and argumentative or isolate or any of these kinds of things whenever somebody says something that we don't like or agree with, of which trains them to what? No longer criticize you. That's what they mean when they say walking on eggshells. You created a world where people are afraid to talk to you about certain things, and that's usually the coping mechanism we use, right? We will make our reaction so bad that they don't want to do it anymore. So part of getting over that is understanding that you must have all the data. You must have all the data before processing actions. You must admit that you're giving control of your mind to your emotions and that you have been emotionally reacting when, I call that the BPD filter. Everything you're taking in passes through this BPD filter before you make decisions. Well, that's just ridiculous nonsense. You need to be able to collect the data so you don't have like gaps in reality where you're not clearly understanding everything. Just try and remember that anger masks pain. If you are reacting and you are angry, you're in pain over something. Maybe it's, I felt unheard or ignored or not good enough, whatever it is. We need to figure out what those triggers are in order to prevent them. And they're usually nothing like what you think they are. The real triggers take a little bit of work to investigate and figure out. And when you have the full data, you will start making better choices. Trixie says, but now I'm so broken that I can't be fixed, and everyone I protect don't even know I exist. Well, the hero story is never easy. That's the truth. The hero story is never easy. It requires tribulation. It often requires tragedy. It requires immense struggle. But I think you would agree that out of everyone you know, deep down, you are the best to handle in most situations that you're in. I always knew that in my heart. You know, I always trusted myself to be able to do the best, but I wouldn't do it. I would choose victimhood. Victimhood kept me trapped. Telling myself every day that I'm broken. I was doing that. I was negative. The negative self-talk was completely taking over my entire world. Let's not forget the famous Bruce Lee quote, which I love so much. He says, "Do not speak negatively about yourself, even as a joke." All right? The mind does not know the difference. Words are magic. They have energy. They cast spells. That's why it's called spelling. MMPR, good morning to you. Is it common that your partner is your favorite person as well? It's extremely common for your partner to be your favorite person, although they don't have to be. The favorite person could be anyone. And sometimes you might even have more than one favorite person. That often happens if you have like isolated pieces of life, right? So you have your church life and you have this hobby over here, maybe your sports life on your sports team, then you go to school or... Thank you, Tika. You know, you might find a favorite person in each one of these areas. That's something that happens sometimes. Usually it's your partner, though. And a lot of people think that the favorite person complex is just purely unhealthy. I would disagree with that. I think the way that it's constructed is unhealthy most of the time, but I don't think it always has to be unhealthy. I think we all have someone that we prefer or like more than other people. That's just normal chemistry. For example, it's unhealthy when you get into a position where you're giving too much to where it's awkward. Thank you, user. Or to where you're building resentment. So either you're building resentment or they feel uncomfortable. That's when it's unhealthy, in my opinion. Bruce, and also when you're relying on them solely for validation and no one else and cannot validate yourself, that's an issue too. Bruce says, how do you become less envious and jealous of others? Like, that should have happened to me, but it didn't. Well, the jealousy is a delineation. It's not a symptom. It's a feature. There's a difference between features and symptoms. Symptoms are the core 9 things that traits that you must have 5 of these 9 in order to have borderline personality disorder. Features are delineations of the symptoms and can sometimes be very tricky and clever. Things like jealousy and envy fall under fear of abandonment, usually, although they can manifest under paranoia and a couple other of the symptoms. But fear of abandonment usually manifests in a way like jealousy. And I think part of the answer is understanding the basic concept that the only person it is reasonable to compare yourself to is who you were yesterday, not to anyone else today or to anyone else at all. That's an unreasonable measurement. It's like measuring, an apple to an orange. They're just different things. One of them's a different color, one of them's a different fruit. Like, they're just different. It makes no sense to try and compare those in the basis that any real, what am I trying to say here? You can't get anything valuable out of comparing those two objects the way that we try to compare ourselves to other people. It's impossible. It's just impossible. And all you will get is feeling worse, because naturally you're always going to pick people who are doing better in your eyes. But better is subjective. The entire experience all around is subjective. Circumstances are different in every single scenario. Experiences are different. Core beliefs are different. Our family environment's different. It's impossible for us to really truly compare ourselves to other people. So you are the only person you are, and your experience is isolated to your experience. And I would say that if you focus more on validating the outside world and giving to the outside world, you will focus much less on what you're missing and, what you're deficit of and what other people have more than you. I think you should focus more on making the world a better place. And I think that will solve a lot of the problems when it comes to jealousy and envy. But this goes for everybody. If I'm missing your comments or, it needs a little bit more personalized guidance that I just can't get as deep into here, like knowing some more about who you're jealous of or what you're jealous of, or if it's more of a work thing or more of a relationship thing or whatever, shoot me an email. There's a button in my profile, and let me know what's going on for you, and I'll give you some personalized guidance. User 600 says, I had been sober for 10 months. The past week, I have been drinking every day and self-sabotaging. How to help? Okay, well, part of the problem, user, is that the drinking is not your problem. So I would say to just go ahead and keep doing what it is that you're doing, because you will not stop based on what I say right here anyway. You must understand your own value, and that is why you're drinking, because the rest of your life is not right. Something's not right. Be it in your relationship, be it at work, maybe there's a lack of purpose overall. I'm not sure, so please do reach out and let me know what's going on. I did study substance misuse as my minor focus for both of my graduate programs because I suffered so tremendously from it. But nobody ever quits drinking because somebody tells them to quit drinking, and if they do, it's for the wrong reasons. And when they count the time, they almost always relapse. Always relapse. That is because drinking is the solution. It's an inappropriate solution. Do you see? It's not the actual problem. So if you're trying to stop drinking because you know that it is exacerbating the problems in your life, and you're desperately doing everything you can just to avoid the bottle, but not solving the rest of your life, it's just a matter of time. It's like a ticking time bomb. So I always tell people another tip is don't count the time. Like, everybody wants to count the time. I did that, and everybody else does it too. And you have that 180-day chip, right, until you don't, right? And then when you don't, you're like, oh, shit. Now you're disappointed in yourself, and now I'm a failure, and I'll never get out, I'm a loser. I mean, you are exactly what it is that you tell yourself. And you are somebody, I'll tell you who you are, something I know about you, user 600. You are someone who found a live like this and is willing to show up at 7 a.m. in the morning and listen to me talk about how to make your life better. That's who you are. So you have a choice in terms of where you want to go. But you need to take a hard look at your life and ask yourself, what's holding me back in my life to the point where drinking's preferable. And how can I fix the real problems? That's when the drinking will go away. And you're very welcome. Violet, good morning to you. When I'm alone, I find that that's when the thoughts get worse. And yes, well, of course, because we have emotional impermanence, meaning when someone is not in the room, we don't really know if they still love us or not. Kind of like the answer to this is understanding the childhood concept of object permanence. Okay, you know how we play peekaboo? Is Kevin really there? Oh, there he is. He is. Is he though? Is he really there? I don't know. Right? Well, we have this kind of concept, but with emotions. When the partner walks out of the room and we're alone, we all of a sudden feel like nobody cares and we're unloved and they don't love us and it's not real, but obviously like they're just behind the hands. You see they're behind the hands. But understanding that concept and feeling silly about it, which I encourage you to do, is what's going to help you get over stuff like that. Realizing the basic concept that other people have emotional permanence might be enough to put you in the right direction. Then you have to ask yourself, why don't I have emotional permanence? Why? Why don't I have that? And the answer always comes back to our internal issue of needing to validate ourselves. That's where it all starts. Self-validation. You got to figure out how to accept the basic fact that you deserve the basic human right of feeling good enough. You deserve it. Don't even have to do anything. Don't care about your circumstances. Don't care about your situation. You still deserve to be here. Just like me. There's nothing different about that. Between me, you, and everybody else here, we all deserve to be here. Period. End of discussion. Now we can try and build a life that we want to live. Now we can feel love. Well, because I do deserve love. That's fine. See? That's it. It's that simple. And when you feel like you don't, and when you have problems accepting the love, you got to get into the trauma on why, what's in the way, right? What's in the way? Aisha says, I like someone with BPD and he rejected me. I don't want to leave him now. I like him a lot. What should I do? Well, firstly, Aisha, I hate to say this part, but I'm going to start with this part. We're going to get this over with right away, okay? You can't control other people. Period. Can't control them. Cannot control them no matter how bad you want to control them, no matter how much you want to try and change them or fix them or whatever. You can't do it. You just can't. You could help them, you could guide them, you could give them some resources, you could care for them, you could listen to them, you could be there. You could make them laugh, you can make them smile, you can have good memories, but you can't control them and you can't make them happy, okay? They have to want it themselves. I would take a hard look at the awareness on his end, and I would think about where is he in the process, because there is a ladder in terms of getting better. And please do reach out to me if you need any help at all trying to figure any of this out. I'm happy to guide you. Just tell me a little bit more about what's going on. I personally respond to all my emails. I get a lot of them, but I sit there and I do it. Generally every day usually. I think I'm about 24 hours behind right now, which is pretty damn good for how many come in. But please do click my profile, click the email button, tell me the story, and I'll guide you a little better, okay? You're very welcome. Katie says, why do we come out with recurring complaints or issues periodically, especially with partners? Okay, so you mentioned periodically, which is an important word because you are recognizing that there are periods when you are not complaining. I'll start by saying complaining has no value. I think you figured that part out, at least from the perspective that they don't listen anyway. You can complain all that you want, Katie, but it's like you're unheard, right? They're not listening to that. I mean, they hear you. They do hear you. It's just they don't understand. They don't get it and they never will. And it's a huge waste of time trying to explain it to them. And I'm not trying to say that to be mean. You feel alone because you are alone because we are all alone. That's the truth. And it's scary. I get that. You can have camaraderie. You can have support. You can have people. You can have love. You can have a partner. You can have soulmate. but you're still alone in your mind all the time, all the time. And you spend 99% of your time alone. Yet, look, what they do must matter so much because I'm miserable and this person's in my life and it must be them. Must be them. But you could substitute that partner for a million other partners and you'll just complain about each one because the grass isn't greener on the other side. And really, we are complaining because we are building the resentment over the course of time. You said the word periodically. So you're behaving correctly until you're not, but then all the other stuff you've been harboring has come out because we don't know how to communicate the things that we need, half of which you were probably right about, but not when you're exploding, when it finally comes out. You need better communication tools along the way. You need a different kind of empathy that most of us cannot experience before remission without practicing it. And that is an authentic selflessness that truly investigates the other person's perspective. I mean, really dives in to their experience. You have to really get what it's like to see life through their eyes, even if they're your enemy in the scenario. Having the grace to have empathy, even for someone who's betrayed you, is one of the things that will speed you up and stop all things like the complaining, right? LD Perez, good morning to you. How come one partner wants to capitalize on their pain while the other embraces escapism? Well, you do have the anxious, avoidant attachment styles coming together, which form that kind of environment. And it's just because people learn different ways to survive in the world. One partner learned in response to tragedy to run from their problems. The other person learned that they should just grip on and try tenaciously to resolve this right now. I was like that most of the time. I could split into the avoidant, but just very rare. Most of the time I was like, we need to handle this right now. And I'd be following my partner around the house trying to convince them why I'm right or how to fix it. Yeah, I would just be profusely apologizing and arguing and back and forth between feeling guilty or blaming them and like blaming me. And it's just like, the whole thing is a mess. But having an avoidant attachment with an anxious attachment makes a lot of sense. The avoidant individual will put in less when times are tough. The anxious individual will put in more when times are tough. And it's still 100%. You see, if it was even and we're at 100%, that's how it looks the other way. It's obviously very painful for really both people. The avoidant usually doesn't want to deal with the anxious, which is why they're withdrawing, and the anxious usually doesn't want to have to chase, but that's why they're chasing so much, right? It's two weird puzzle pieces that just very commonly fit together. That's how it is. Tracy says we want that deep connection, I think, but it's a push-pull and test. Well, the push-pull mechanism, it's oftentimes not a conscious test. Like, I know that it looks like a test, and I know that we can admit it might be a test, and we can kind of identify it as a test, but in reality, it's not quite what's happening psychologically. When I'm pushing someone away, it's because I don't feel I deserve love. And I want to also ensure, I guess, that the love is really serious on their end, that they're really serious about it. That's the test part, but it's never a conscious decision. I'm not like, I'm just going to run and this person will chase me. I'm just fight or flight freaking out and I end up running or whatever it may be, right? That's always been a fight or flight kind of response, not this intricately planned response. When I'm pulling them in, it's because it's out of fear. I'm terrified of losing them. But really, it's not even them that I'm terrified of losing. I'm terrified of losing anyone, right? That's how that was back before remission. It wasn't really about that person in specific. It was just the idea that somebody would leave. And that doesn't mean that I don't want them back. Two things can be true at the same time. So let's not skip ahead and start making assumptions that aren't real. The pull part, it's I want to create a world in that place where I want to see that they love me, even though I just felt I didn't deserve it. Now I wish I had it. And then when they give it, I'm going to push them away again because I don't deserve it. It's this weird thing. And notice how the answer keeps coming back to I have to accept that I deserve love. Basic love. Shelley says you think BPD comes from trauma. I think BPD is 50% genetic and that you were genetically predisposed in most cases. And then I think it was environmentally activated, of which doesn't necessarily have to be trauma. It could have been something as simple as being in an invalidating environment. My etiology, for example, included very real physical trauma. It also included, mental and emotional kind of traumas, but the environment in general was invalidating. The genetic factors were most likely all there, and there was just an environment that I would say is the perfect picture for BPD to form. But it could have been any of those little things. It could have been any small thing. You could just, have the genes and end up with it. So I think it's a very tenacious, ambitious condition. I say ambitious because it will do anything to take over someone if it's there. It's so hard to dodge this bullet, so to speak, right? If you have it, it's almost like you were destined to have it, which is a whole other topic. And I think there's a reason that these genes exist, and I don't think that it's the curse that everybody thinks it is. I think the genes exist because there's a need for superheroes. I mean, I'm serious. I think there's a legit need for actual superheroes on planet Earth. I think that every neighborhood needs a Batman. I think that your household needs you. I think that your friends need you. I think that the people in your life who love and depend on you need you. I think there are strangers that you have not yet met who need you. I think there is a purpose out there that needs you. And I think there are very few people who can do what it is that you can do. I truly believe that about all of us. I really do. I think we are very special, very unique people placed here to do very special, unique things. And it's okay if you don't know what that is yet. You could start by helping someone else, someone around you. Doesn't matter who. Just pick up the phone and help someone else, But I think that time is moving. You're going to have to repin this one maybe a couple times a minute because I would like to explain this concept. I had this revelation this weekend. I was wondering, why are we here? Because we're all suffering through this until we learn how to get to remission, and then we're just struggling to be better and better and better, and we're no longer suffering, right? We ditch the suffering. Why would the universe create people who have to suffer like we suffer? Why? If not to create the diamond that comes out of the pressure, Why though? Time's moving forward and there are things happening around you, right? And no matter what the war might be, the battle, you are the best suited for that battle. I don't know what that might be. For me, it's BPD. I have to... Thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. I am responsible for destroying this condition in the world. I need to eliminate it. I need to eradicate it. I was put here to get rid of the negative coping parts of BPD, not the positive stuff, not the stuff that's getting me to this place. What you're meant to do is maybe very different than what I'm meant to do. Most likely it is. We all end up doing all these different amazing things. But it's almost like we were put here and scattered around and we're waiting for the moment when we're needed. Okay? It's like we're waiting for the moment when we're needed. Almost like we're waiting to be activated from the other side. You start out in life as a victim, basically, and BPD gets activated. All the negative coping mechanisms. There's something in the world, I think, for each of us that activates the other side of it. I think that's important. So anyway, if you want to repin that one, if you're able to find that. If not, I do apologize. I think it was a comment by Elizabeth. Let's see. Was it, what if you don't have people around me that need that? No, we're not there yet. There's always people who need help. I'll tell you that right now. You can't escape that responsibility by thinking there's no one who needs you, because there are people who need you. I assure you that. How do I manage the deep emotions? Is it that one? Well, there's always things. There's always people, and you doing good no matter what is at the forefront of getting out of this. I'll tell you that right now. And in terms of managing deeper emotions, in terms of being rejected, because that's what that is. When you say you were dumped, it's just rejection, which is just a trigger, and it's a trigger that sparks the fear of abandonment, and the fear of abandonment's there because you don't feel good enough. You don't feel good enough because you weren't validated properly as a child and didn't learn how to do that yourself. So now you have to rely on the outside world to tell you that you're good enough. And because this individual decided that they want to go into the next chapter of their life without you, you translate that and say, well, I must not be good enough. But it has already happened, let's say, right? I know it's 8-year relationship. He says he's left because of the BPD. Let me tell you what, Elizabeth, there's no point in your history where you didn't do the best you could do at any specific time. If you could have done something else, you would have done something else. You follow me here? You would have. So we can't beat ourselves up over the past. The reason it's so hard to get over this is because you're not just grieving the loss of your boyfriend. You're grieving the loss of a future that you saw, likely the only future you saw, of which included your boyfriend, correct? That's how that works. It's painful because I only saw one future, and that is part of the solution, simulating all futures, and you have to be cognizant about it the whole time. I can paint a worst and best case scenario and still aim for the best. I like to look at the future like a scale, and the easiest way to do it, what's the worst case? What's the worst possible thing that could happen to me? This. What's the best? What do I want? What if everything worked out perfect? What would that be? Now, there's a million futures in between. And I'm just going to try and press on the weight that leans me towards the futures that I want. That's how you get out of that. You have to start seeing the spectrum of futures in front of you and recognizing that you could find good in almost all of them. Almost all of them. I end up under a bridge, with absolutely nothing. Carolyn leaves me. I've got nothing going on there. I'm still going to find a way to go live every morning and do what I do. I'm not going to let a circumstance that's in the outside world manipulate and control the chemical process going on in my mind. That's just silly. That's just silly. It's a painful thing, and some of the grief, by the way, you have to go through. You have to go through grief. It's just it's a process. It's part of life. It's part of life. But it doesn't mean that the grief has to control your actions. You could still do good no matter what. You could still help others no matter what. And you need to start looking at the victimhood mentality that is attaching itself to this condition as unacceptable. You need to look at it as holding you back from what you were put here to do, which is quite simply make the world a better place. Make the world a better place. It's that simple. You can start right now. You can start today. It doesn't have to be this big thing. You don't have to change your entire life overnight in order to make your life better today. You know what I mean? And you're not going to be able to change it overnight. But you could do one small thing for yourself today, or better yet, for someone else, which is infinitely more valuable to the entire world, yourself included. I believe in everybody here. I'm glad you're all here. I'm glad that you care enough to show up. I want to remind you, we go live 7 a.m. US EST. That is Eastern Standard Time. And we post all the episodes to YouTube, so there's really no excuse. You can't sidestep improvement anymore, knowing that someone like you got out of it like me. Okay? So I'll see you all tomorrow, 7 a.m., bright and early. Try and make the world slightly better today for someone around you. Do something good for the rest of the world. Give it a shot and see how it makes you feel. I guarantee you it's the quickest way to learning to validate yourself. Just validate someone else. I'll see you all tomorrow.